Hey everybody, thanks for watching A Guy Doing Stuff. I'm Adam, and today I'm going to be installing the end wedge. I'm really happy with how this is looking so far. My sides are radiused, and I have the kerfing and side bracing attached now. You can see where the sides come together at the lower bout right here. There's about an 1/8 inch gap. There are a lot of ways you can fill this area in. I'm going to use a technique I learned from one of Eric Schaefer's videos. Pretty much what I'm going to do is just cut a shallow wedge shape and wedge a piece of wood into it. I did this on my first guitar too, and this is what it ends up looking like. The first thing I'm going to do is clean the sides up with an orbital to see what I'm working with. I don't think the exact width or angle of the wedge matters that much, but I'm going to try to keep mine at about 1 inch wide at its widest point. I cut this scrap piece of Zericode on the bandsaw that I'm going to be using for the wedge. I clamp it on top of a piece of plywood and run a hand planer along both sides of it to get a super straight, flat edge. Once you have your wedge, you got to find center on everything. An easy way to find center is to get a measuring stick, choose a point on it, and make sure both edges are equal distance away from your reference point. If the 3-inch mark is my center point, I line it up on my block until the 3-inch mark has the same distance from each edge. In this case, it's 1 inch and 9/16. I find the center on the top and bottom of my end block, and I make 2 center points on my wedge and draw a center line on it by connecting the points. When I line all these center points up to each other, the wedge should be centered on the body of the guitar. I clamp it down in this center position. While it's clamped, I'm going to take this Japanese pull saw that's super sharp and precise and use the wedge as a fence to make a really shallow cut. The best setup for working on the sides like this is to hang them. I clamped a 2x4 in my vise and I put a towel on it for cushion, and I hang the sides like this so it's an easy position to work on. As soon as I get all the way through the Zericode, I stop cutting. I make this cut on both sides of my wedge, and then when I take the wedge off, I should have cuts that mimic its shape. Now I make a bunch of those shallow cuts like this on the wedge area. You don't have to use a fence for this, but it's not a bad idea to use one just to be safe. Once these cuts are made, you can get a chisel and press the blade down, and these chips just kind of pop off. You start at the top and just keep on chipping off little tiny bits like this. Once all the chips are popped out, you gotta clean the area up a little bit. You can just use a chisel and some files to do this. It doesn't have to be perfect. If I did everything right, I should be able to test my cut by dry fitting the wedge in here like this. I'm gonna add a little strip of maple on each side too, just to make it look a little bit fancier. I put some glue on the wedge and maple strips, push everything into place, and put a squeeze clamp on each side, and then I wait a couple hours for it to dry. After it dries, I cut the ends off with a pull saw like this, and I use a hand planer to get it close to flush with the sides, and then when it's close, I use an orbital to sand it all down even. The last step is to use a chisel to take both the ends down a little bit lower than the blocks. After I glue the soundboard and back on, I'm going to route a channel for the binding here so it doesn't have to be perfect as long as it's not protruding past the blocks. I'll talk more about that process later in my series. Thank you to Worksharp Tools for sponsoring these videos. I'm going to put links to all their stuff in my video description. I'm also going to put a link to Eric Schaefer Guitars video about the end wedge process. He made a really good extensive video about it. I used a lot of his videos when I was learning how to build my first guitar. I definitely recommend checking all his stuff out. Thank you guys for watching, and feel free to leave a comment or question in the comment section.